morning we're talking about disaster preparedness, so natural disasters. We'll talk about what the school does in order to prepare for these, but because we'll be introducing some of the tools that the school have, we'll slide sometimes a little off topic to other areas, but this morning is really about natural disasters. So we'll present, for instance, the school health and safety plan, which includes other things, obviously, such as disease outbreaks, other things than natural disasters. So, but we'll try to stay on topic as much as possible. So I would like to finally also thank Anne Winterman. She's an EB parent. She's over there. Thank you, Anne. And she actually made all of this possible. Thank you, Anne, very much. And without any further ado, I will hand over to Tarek. Thank you.
Well, guys, thank you. I wish we were meeting on better circumstances. I know many of you might be out of power. Do you guys mind raising your hand if your house has been affected by the recent power shutoff? Okay. So, I mean, it's significant. It's something within our community. And I think it's good that we're talking about it now. The first step is getting informed. And we're going to talk about the number one thing you can do to get informed, which is what you're doing right now. Sitting at one of these events, talking to your neighbors, talking to people who specialize in this. And with no further ado, let's jump right in. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. This is what I do, individual and community preparedness. We're going to go through every single step of the process here. The first one is Know Your Hazards. And there's a really great tool that our partner, California Office of Emergency Services, they're the people that directly respond to wildfires. We support them in that response. They've developed called Cal OES My Hazards. And now there's two ways to get through this My Hazards. Now raise your hand if you have a cell phone that is connected to the internet that can get, I don't know, Google. All right, great. We're all in a good position here. All right, so the next step is doable. I'm happy to hear that. So we're going to go through this. We're going to know your hazards. Again, first step, we're going to go through that. That's interactive. We're going to make a plan. I'm going to teach you guys what you need on the plan, how to go about it, the resources we have, many of which are here. But it doesn't end here, it just begins here. There's a lot of different steps we're going to take, and that's going to be the last part, which is get involved. Build a kit. This one kind of sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't. It's pretty straightforward, and what I've done, sorry to keep pilfering from my table. What I've done is I've produced these, which is really handy. It kind of goes through everything that I need in a kit, but I'll also walk through this with you. Because again, this is a whole community process. And it's really important that the information you get today, talk about it, share it. Make sure that your neighbors know about this, because everyone whose hand was raised for the power shutoff, I guarantee you're not the only person in your block that was affected. We're going to go into how to stay informed. That's also equally important. Right now, I'm going to give you information that's topical, that's current, that's relevant for right now. But I don't know when the next natural disaster is going to happen. No one knows when the next earthquake is going to happen. We have a general sense. So it's always important that you know the processes to get informed the minute it happens, so you're not the last person to know. And then how to get involved. That's the fun part. We're going to talk a lot about that. All right, so you know how I badger you guys about the phones? If everyone could take out their phones right now. All right, great. So step one, take out your phone. You guys already did great. Step two, Google My Hazards by Cal OES. So that just that sentence, My Hazards, Cal OES. A website should pop up. If anyone wants a direct link to that website too, I have it here. Raise your hand, I'll bring it right to you. Great, now who's at the website? Raise your hand if you're at their website. Great, all right, cool. So as you can see, you press OK for the, if you want to use this website, please press OK. It's kind of important here. The second step is typing in your address. As you can see on the top here, what I have is that's our regional office's address. And it kind of puts it in perspective that, we get lucky. And that's really what it comes down to. It's luck and it's preparedness. That's the two things that have saved us so far. But take a look, and then I want someone to raise their hand when they're done and they have their entire house mapped. All right, great. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, great. Do you mind standing up, and then if you don't mind, if you just state what town or county you're from?
Oakland, Alameda County.
Good.
And so just should I just tell you what list it says there?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay, so, well, it says tsunami emergency response planning zone. It says that I'm in a 100-year floodplain. I'm in a liquefaction zone area. I'm in an SRA very high area, and I'm in an earthquake fault zone of required investigation.
Okay,
So
there's
I
a lot to
think
unpack
it's
there. Lots to unpack.
Let's see.
I promise we'll talk about each and every one of those. So the first one, do you mind telling me what the first one was? It was a tsunami you mentioned?
Yes.
I want to qualify that. Tsunami. The threat to tsunami here is not very high. I will say, if there was a tsunami, just based on known fault zones, we'd have a lot of warning when it comes down to it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's always smart to be prepared. But the same steps to being prepared for a tsunami, you're going to take for being prepared for more realistic threats that have a higher chance of actually happening. For instance, earthquake, really high chance. We're in California. I know I probably don't have to say that. Wildfires, I know you mentioned that there is a area right now, and those of us in the red to orange here know all about that. But before I continue here, what I want to do is I want to talk about this map just to make sure we're all on the same page, okay? All right, so who can tell me what this area right here is, this tan area right here? Anybody want to hazard a guess? No pun intended? Liquefaction, absolutely. Now, does anyone know what liquefaction is?
Landfill.
Yeah, but landfill is a perfect example of what it is. What it basically refers to is land that doesn't have bedrock associated with it. Now, what that means is, in the event of an earthquake, if it's bedrock, what happens? It's able to withstand that earthquake. If it's sediment that's easily movable, what happens in an earthquake?
Water infiltrates?
Yeah, exactly. It moves because the water comes up and it basically it acts like a slush. We saw it in Japan. What it means is buildings lose their ability to stand. You know, if what it's built on isn't solid bedrock, it's not anchored to it, it's going to be kind of hard for that building to, you know, stay where it is. It's going to go down. We see this happening right now even. There's examples in the East Bay, which, as you can see right here, is heavily affected by this. The building's sinking, and that's blue sky days. That's days without any earthquakes, without any craziness. So keep that in mind. If you live in an area with that, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry. It's something that you should just prepare for. And again, we're going to go through every single step of the preparation for that. So that was really good. Now this checkered area, what do you think that is? Tsunami affected zone, and again, this is just in relation to if there was a tsunami, which there'd be a lot of time to give you guys warning. If the tsunami sirens would go off, you would know it was happening. You would be affected, but I want to stress this: the chance of a tsunami happening is not very high in relation to the other stuff around there. So, in terms of what you should prepare for, stick that at the bottom. You know, it's something that you should have on your radar, but it shouldn't be a big blip. All right, let's go right here. This one's kind of fun. What's this blue-purple line right here? That's a fault. Exactly. All right, can anyone tell me what fault that is?
The Hayward.
Hayward fault. Absolutely. Now, not to bring up people's anxiety, this is not the reason I'm doing it, but can anyone tell me the last time the Hayward fault went off?
A
long time ago, 1860s. Can anyone tell me, historically speaking, and this is just all the data we have from geological surveys, historically speaking, the amount of time between each time the Hayward fault has gone off?
30 years.
I'm sorry?
30 years.
150 years. So, can anyone tell me what relative metric in terms of level of earthquake can be expected from this fault? And again, remember, it's based on the length of the fault. So this is a really long fault. Can anyone guess? So we're talking about ones that you would feel, so like a 4 to a 9. It's not going to be a 9, I'm telling you, it's not going to be a 9. So what do you guys think? 7, exactly. It's around 7, 7.1, 7.2. Now, in the event of that going off, which again goes off every, historically speaking, 150 years, last time it went off, anyone? 1864. What would be 150 years from 1864?
No.
2015, yeah. So we're at 2019. We've been lucky so far. Now, I do want to stress this. This is not a perfect way to determine when the fault's going to go off. It doesn't mean tomorrow the fault's going to go off. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is this is something that we have to be vigilant about. We have to be prepared for. Because I don't know when the disaster's going to happen. You don't know when the disaster's going to happen. It's not something we can predict. We can only do it based on historical data. And historical data says to be prepared. Yeah?
What was the fault that activated the 1989 earthquake? Was it
Yeah.
the Hayward fault?
That was not the Hayward fault. Yeah. So going forward from this, can anyone tell me what this red area is? High fire probability danger. Now it's called state responsibility area. What that means is the state jumps in, firefighters jump in. It's something that they react to immediately. Red is the highest probability, and then you have this orange here. It doesn't mean a fire is going to happen. I just want to stress this. None of this means it's going to happen. It just means that there's a higher probability of it happening in your area. Now, whose anxiety has been raised by this? I'm so sorry. I promise you we will talk about ways that we can reduce the stress here. All right, so does anyone have any questions for this? I want to encourage people to ask questions as they come up. This is a dialogue here. There is no such thing as a silly question. There's no such thing as a bad question. This is all about collective learning, and I want to stress collective here because we're all part of a community that's a support system for each other. Seeing none, either I'm doing a fantastic job or, all right, let's do this. All right, so I know I promised to talk about every single one, and I meant it. We're going to talk a little bit about earthquakes. Now, this is a super specific trivia question that if anyone gets right, that's like 500 points. I'm going to raise the stakes here. I'm going to give you guys, if you guess this right, whoever in the room guesses this right, a special perk here. What this is, it's a Prepare with Pager. It's a fantastic coloring book for all ages. I enjoy it. And then for those of you with kids out there, which I hope all of you have kids here. If so, I'm confused where you're in this building. This is helping children cope with disasters, which is important. This is in pairing together. This is a great way to introduce the idea to your kids because just as you're seeing it on the TV and hearing it on the radio, so are they. And it's important that, I also want to stress, and I was kind of joking that I'm just going to give this to a few people. If you guys want more, please tell me. I'll grab them and I'll make sure I'll give it to Anne and she can facilitate that, if that's okay, Anne.
Yeah.
All right, great. So the stakes are high. Who wants to guess what the 17th of this month is the 30th anniversary of? You gotta raise your hand here. I'm not gonna know who wins. Nope.
1989.
1989. What happened in 1989?
Earthquake, Loma Prieta.
Exactly. All right, so this is topical. Great. I like it. Sorry guys, I promise there'll be easier ones. So you guys have had a chance to look at the slide. It's a fantastic slide. I know it looks really nice. But focusing on the words of the slide, is anyone curious about anything on this? Can I elaborate on this before I jump over to what to do during an earthquake? Because I know you guys are wondering that. Yeah? All right, so raise your hand. I'm all about raising hands if you do not have this sheet. All right, while it's being passed around, I'm going to ask another trivia question. Now, I apologize, this one is not for the giddies, because this one's a bit too easy in my mind. We'll see. We'll see if there's a quiet audience, and then if that's the case, I'll raise up the stakes here. All right, we are looking for, if you are in the car and the Hayward fault goes off, what do? You're driving in the car. What do? Stop, perfect, yeah. Stop and what?
Pull over.
Pull over, perfect. And then for the marbles here, this is for the actual prize here. What's an extra precaution you could take? So we have stop, we have pull over. What's a third thing you can do that you think might be beneficial? That's a great one, yeah, turn off your car. What we're also looking for, just to give you guys a little bit more of an information, what we're also looking for, you can stop, you can turn off your car. Depending on if you're a hill or not, remember how if you're on a hill, you want to turn your car in? What else do you want to do if you're on a hill?
Wheels.
Emergency brake. Turn on your emergency brake. Make sure you're not going anywhere. And then for an extra level of precaution, because you can never be too safe, what do? The 3 steps you do. It's not stop, drop, and roll. It's drop, cover, hold. Exactly. Do the same thing in your car. It's not going to hurt. In fact, it's actually going to be much better for you. Now, I say this deliberately because depending on where you live, I want to stress this because this is particularly impactful when it comes to earthquakes. What do you think hurts? Is it the earth quaking or is it something else? Something else. It's debris falling. I heard someone say that. That's exactly right. Now, Christchurch is a perfect example of this. There's a really vivid image. If you guys have some time, I encourage you to really, there's a podcast on it called The Big One. They go through a really great summary of this. And if you guys want more information on earthquakes, that's a great place to have an entertaining introduction to it. It kind of walks through what would happen if it happened in LA. And it's really cool. We actually had them as a featured speaker at one of our prep talks. That's also available online. But jumping back to this, make sure that you watch out for what's above you in this situation. You had a question?
Yes. Is it different, like if you're in the car and you're on a bridge, like is it different or do you do the exact same steps? Today I was actually thinking about it as we were crossing the bridge and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, was
So-
this full, you know?
No, you're absolutely right. And this is where the critical thinking aspect of it really comes in. Now there's a lot of different rules of thumbs here. We have 2 thumbs, but there's plenty more rules. What I would say is, if you're on a bridge, just base it based on some of the factors there. Now, if you're really close to the end of that bridge, I personally, depending on the situation, now I would make a judgment call here. If the bridge was close enough that I can see the bank of it, I would potentially try to drive to that bank and then pull over to the side. But again, it really depends on a lot of factors, and I don't want to give you guys information that might not be good at the moment in which you need it, right? So critical thinking is important. Make sure that whatever you do is in the best interest of yourself at that time. And I know that kind of sounds a bit like a dodgy answer. What I'm trying to say is that there's so many different factors that can impact your decision here. Like literally an infinite number of factors. So I don't want to give you any specific information that might not be good for each situation. But as a rule of thumb, as a general rule, if you're towards the end of the bridge, if you can easily reach the end of the bridge, you want to try to make it to the end of the bridge, then pull over. However, a bridge is not necessarily the worst place to be because that bridge, in some cases, might be more secure than the liquefaction area. So really base it on what you're dealing with. I know a lot of people, raise your hand if you take BART. I take BART. Does anyone know what they're doing to BART under the bridge in San Francisco? It's really cool. I'll give you a hint. It's what they're doing on the weekends that causes all those delays that everyone hates. They're upgrading the BART system to make it more resilient for a disaster, for an earthquake. Now the bridges themselves, they are rated for some earthquakes, but I should let you know that in terms of your personal preparedness, the best thing you can do is to have a plan and to make sure that when the earthquake does happen, which statistically speaking, of anyone in this room, if you do drive across a bridge, it's most likely, the vast majority of cases, most likely not going to happen on a bridge, just because if you think about the amount of time that you're on a bridge, way more likely to happen when you're at work or when you're in the home, but there's steps you can take, and we'll talk about that, to reduce the impact of that, regardless of where it happens, and that involves a ready kit, but we're going to get to that. Does anyone have any other questions about earthquakes? I know this is it's an earthquake-prone area. No wrong questions. All right, move forward. Wildfires. This is fun. I know they sound really scary, but I want to let you guys know there's steps you can take to make sure you have the information you need to reduce your personal risk to wildfires. Now, what are some steps you can take? Can anyone raise their hand and tell me 1 or 2? There we go.
You can clear brushes around your house.
Absolutely. If you live in a wildfire-prone area, make sure you clear some brushes around your house. That's called defensible space. Defensible space is area around your house that is clear of things that are easy to ignite. Just be proactive about it. That's really good. You can also get certain types of foliage that makes it better. If you want more information, there's a ton of more information online at ready.gov for before a wildfire. It's also really important that you heed all warnings. So if you get an evacuation order don't take an hour or two putting together your finest china and putting it in the back of the car. It might be really nice, but there are more important things. And we'll talk more about that as well. Anyone have any specific questions about wildfires? All right, well, if you guys are interested, there's also some information on wildfires up here. I encourage you to grab one. It's always good to be armed with information. Let's move forward.
I have actually a question about evacuation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, so you're home and then what? Like, I've never been evacuated. Like, you hear the sirens? Do you know where you're supposed to go? What route? Like, I'm so worried about the normal traffic.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Where do you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's evacuation routes that you can take. 211 is a great place to find out more information on your specific situations because it's different based on the county, based on the policies there. But most importantly, it's good to get out of the affected areas. Now, if that means that you're going into traffic, go into traffic. Just make sure you're out of the affected areas. We're going to talk more about alerts and warnings because that's really important. We have a whole slide on it, and I promise you I'm going to give you all the information you need to make up the right decisions. Tsunamis. Okay, we talked about tsunamis. They're scary, they're big, they sound like a lot. They have a cool name that starts with a T but sounds like an S. I will tell you, tsunamis is a threat, but again, it's not as big of a threat as the other stuff. If you prepare for the other stuff, you're preparing for tsunamis. Really quickly, just to make sure you guys are aware, you would get a warning about a tsunami coming. We are plenty far away from a fault where it wouldn't affect us in a short period of time. So we're not in a situation where we typically need to know all this information. It's good to arm yourself, which is why I brought some tsunami stuff to you, all the paper, all the treats. Let's do this. Flooding. So flooding, unlike tsunamis, flooding is very realistic. It's the #1 hazard in the US. Now, flooding might seem like it's not a big deal, but that is not the case. Flooding actually is super dangerous. All right, so you're in a car. What do you do right here? What are some steps you can take? If you're in a car and you see this picture, you see that guy right over there, you see the water here, it doesn't look too deep, what do? You do not drive across. Why don't you drive across? Because you can't see under the water. Yeah, I mean, I wish you could, but you can't. You don't know how deep it is. And even if you know, if you could see under the water, I can't gauge how deep something is from a pool. Can anyone do that? If you can, I mean, more power to you. But it's important here that you know what steps you can take to make sure you're safe. All right, so we already talked about one situation. You're in a car. There is a flood. You do not drive through. All right, do you walk through? Anyone? No, you don't walk through. Same reasons. You don't know how deep it is. Okay, if you're in a situation, and this isn't very realistic, but if you're in a situation where you have to get to a higher level of your house, and the next step is either you go out the window, onto the roof, or you go into the attic, which one do you do? Do not go in the attic. Do you know why? Yeah, how are you going to get out? It's really tough. It's really difficult. That's something to keep in mind. We're not in an area that has that high risk. Now, I want to stress this. Everyone's situation is different. That's why we hazard mapped. If you're in a 100-year floodplain. Now, I'm talking about this deliberately. Can anyone raise their hand? And this is for all the marbles again. What is a 100-year floodplain? Yep.
Area that's like typically prone to flooding. Oh, wow.
Right, yeah. All right, so perfect. I'm going to add a little bit to that. Yep. So it is an area that's typically prone to flooding. It's an area that the chances of it flooding is about 1%, historically speaking. Now, historically speaking is what I want to talk about. It doesn't mean that if it flooded last year, it's not going to flood for 100 years. That is not true. Please do not listen to anyone that says that. That's kind of like a full stop right there. Again, if it flooded last year and you're in a 100-year floodplain, it can still flood this year. That's important to know. Nicely done. Yeah, enjoy it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now I have talked a lot about hazards. Now to talk about something that's really, yep.
Can I just ask a question about the last slide?
Absolutely.
So if you are in this situation, where should you go? If you're that guy, where should you go?
Sure, so you want to get into a building, into something that's higher, if you can. In this situation, you're in the middle of the street. I would call for help, because you never know the situation around you. More importantly, you don't know what's in that water. Oftentimes, the water could be affected by different things. One thing to keep in mind too, and I'm really glad you brought this up, is if there's any indication, you guys see that power light right there, you guys see that traffic light right there, if there's any indication whatsoever that there might be voltage in that water, what do? Stay away. Absolutely. It's very straightforward. But in this case, call for help. Ask for someone. Ask for rescue services, because you don't want to be that person that didn't ask for help when they needed it. And more importantly, they're never going to say no. They're going to say, yes, absolutely, we'll help you, because they don't want you in a situation that's much worse than this, where you're potentially needing life-saving actions. Can you imagine trying to get an ambulance there? It's insane.
Wait, so if no one's around, are you literally just walking to something to hold on to?
Yeah,
You
well,
just wanna get in
try
the
to get up.
building?
So it's going to be a really weird situation if you're in and this could happen, it's just true, but if you're in a situation where there's no one around and you're not near a building or anything that's higher, just try to get to high ground at the end of the day. Normally there's going to be a period where you know the flood's coming. You're going to get some warnings. We're going to talk about the warnings you can get. But take actions then. Now, this is a tough situation here. If you're stuck in this situation, that's unique, and that's where you need help. But what we're going to talk about, the whole preparedness message, is taking actions before this so you're not in this situation. All right, let's jump forward. Power outages. This is really topical. Now, there's a lot of different things that happen with power outages. I gave you guys a sheet that gives you more information on it. Yeah, it's tough. Does anyone have any specific questions about power outages before I go into how to proactively deal with it? Yep.
Why is everyone recommending stashing up on water for power outages?
Yeah, it's a good question. So power outages can disrupt water pumps. Now water is done through pressure, so it might not affect you, but you also don't know to what degree your water is safe. And that's something, if it's an extended power outage, that could affect the water supply in some way. So it's always important just to make sure you have water on the side. And water also, and I want to stress this, it's good for any situation, not just a power outage. Power outages rarely are by themselves. Usually come with a hurricane, usually come with a wildfire. We're in a unique situation now, but I will say that, does anyone have any other specific questions before I jump in? Yes?
I had a question about flooding.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the flood that I remember happened in San Jose a few years ago, and
Yeah.
that was because they released more water than they should have from a dam upstream. This map doesn't show areas that are downstream from dams.
Which
So-
is, yeah.
Which is like a very specific
Absolutely.
area.
You're absolutely right. Spillways are something to really seriously consider, and that's something that that's more in line with the flash flood, which is incredibly dangerous, and that's something that if you know you're in an area that's prone to that, if you know there's a dam in your area, look it up. Try to see if there's any action taken. Call 211 to find out where your nearest shelter is. Find out what the evacuation routes are. Find out what the warning systems are for that. Because unless you're right next to the dam, there's going to be a period of warning that you're going to receive. And that's important that you're in a situation where you are opted into those warning systems, because oftentimes it's an opt-in option, not an opt-out. What that means is you have to sign up for it. They're not going to automatically sign you up for it. So you're right. I mean, it's not perfect. Everyone has a specific situation they're in, and this is why it's important to know your threats and hazards. And the first step is hazard mapping, but it shouldn't end there. Talk to your neighbors, find out about historically what has happened, and then make plans for that. We're going to keep going through, but really quickly, power outage. What do you do if the power shuts off right now in your house? You're in your house, you're on your couch, power shuts off. Appliances are on, what do you do?
Maybe unplug stuff?
Unplug your appliances. I would recommend leaving one light on. Now, why do you want to leave one light on? Exactly, yeah. So you know when it comes back. Don't pick a precious light, pick a light that you don't mind getting shorted out. All right, now, if you have food in the refrigerator and you're not sure how long the power outage is going to go on for, what do? Keep it closed, yeah. And does anyone want to hazard a guess for, relatively speaking, how long food is safe in a freezer for? We're talking about the freezer here. Yeah.
36 hours?
36 to 48 hours. 48 hours is what we're saying. Now, it depends on the freezer. Everyone is in a different situation. If you have a really old freezer from the 1950s, I wouldn't qualify that as 48 hours. But, this is everyone's specific situation. Going into the school's point of view here. So I want to thank you guys for a second for letting me talk so much.
Thanks, Tarek. So as I said at the beginning when we welcome you, we'll have a few touch points this morning about the school's approach, philosophy approach, and a few preparedness exercises that we do. I'm not going to be the only one talking. It'll be each time very brief, like a few lights on what we do. So we'll have Alfonso de la Torre also, facilities manager, and Cécile Gregoriades, who's director of communications and marketing, and our CFO, Antoine Portales, is here also this morning. Those are some of the persons who actually focus specifically on safety at the school. Please also know that we have a safety committee who's composed also of the division heads, because it's very important. They're on the ground and they have access to a lot of students, so it's important that we're all together in those conversations. So 4 areas for us when we look at the school's philosophy when it comes to safety and disaster preparedness. Processes, people, content, and equipment. It sounds like a lot, and it could be, and that's why it requires a lot of work for all of us. But the reason is that safety and preparedness is actually our top priority. And the reason is, if you don't have a child who's safe, that child cannot learn. And I'm talking emotionally and physically safe. The learning process needs safety for this to occur, and that's why it's so important for us. So those are some of the examples of what we do. We'll go back to these, but we have a lot of routines and exercises and drills that we have to do in order for the content to become very natural, almost like muscle memory, if you will. Our approach to safety, I want to go back to the little section that you've seen. Processes mean we have to commit long-term to preparedness and safety. That is very important to us. We usually don't react when something happens and come up with something that we never thought of, although we learn from experience. So if something happens, we'll look into it. And to give you an example, the power outage or the shut-off that's happening right now, schools are closing. So we have to talk about it and come up with a contingency plan, if you will. And so we know now that we could probably operate up to 12 hours without power in the school. After that, it's an issue because our fire alarms will be, the batteries are out. And so it's kind of a hazard for us to operate without fire alarms in the school. So after 12 hours without power, we might have to cancel school for the long, or how long the power outage will last. So commit long term, it's about anticipation, prevention, preparation, and being proactive. That's what we are doing today. As Tarek mentioned, proactivity is very, very important for us. It's about people. We have to work as a team. This is a big topic. It's a difficult topic, so we want to be a team fully prepared, fully committed, but we also want to learn from others. And having FEMA come here, for us it's fantastic, but we also work with other partners because we are educators. We're not specialists of safety, so we have to learn safety, but we have to learn from others. The content is really important. I'm not scared, I'm prepared, so we tend to try to develop preparedness, not paranoia. But don't want to be paranoid. You should start thinking about all the possibilities. You had start running in circles. But we know that probabilities will tell us what can happen, such as an earthquake. Most likely it will happen at some point, and that's why we're preparing for it. And for us, because we also educate young people, it's important for this content to be developmentally appropriate. So we want to make sure that we have the right content, the right language, to be able to pass it on to our students. And with the equipment, it also comes down to priorities and investing wisely. Schools should be able to be equipped to answer to natural disasters, and that requires a certain number of investments, and we'll talk about that, such as kits, or where those kits are located, etc. But there is no quick fix, particularly when it comes to safety. So just a little interlude here to present to you how we approach things, and I think we'll hand it over right now to Tarek.
All right, great. So who feels more prepared now? Who feels more informed? That's the #1 step. Raise your hand if you feel more informed. Great, we're doing a great job. Let's continue it. All right, so now we're going to talk about the second step, which is making a plan. Now, out of curiosity, raise your hand if you have a plan. Raise your hand if you're going to develop a plan. Yeah, we got this. All right, that's what I want to see. This is great. All right, so there's a lot of things to consider when you're making your plan. How to get the family emergency alerts. We're going to talk about that, I promise you. We got this. How to make sure that there's safe locations. How to make sure that your family knows how to get to those locations. how to make sure that you have multiple locations. So there's not just one place that place is flooded. What do we do? There's a lot of different options here, and there's a lot of different resources you can use, and we're going to go through all of that. Communication plans. That's really important. Who has a second phone number they can call in the event of an emergency? Yeah, who carries 2 cell phones? There we go. Yeah, that's good to have. That's good to have. Perfect. How many people know how to get in touch with their kid 24/7? Nice. Okay. All right. There you go. Hey, that's a start. That's the way to do it. All right. How do you guys think that you would let your loved ones know that you're safe? Any idea? There's a few options. I'll give you a hint. One of them starts with social and ends with something else.
Media.
Can anyone give me one example of a social media tool that they could use in a disaster to make people know that they're safe? Facebook. What does Facebook do?
I'm safe.
Yeah, I'm safe check-in. Yeah, use that. There's that option. And then there's also texting. If the phone lines are down, text can potentially go through. Keep that in mind. And this is where that call goes through point of contact. That's where it makes it really important that you know who to contact in the case of a disaster, because if the local phone lines are down, it doesn't necessarily mean the national ones are down. So an out-of-state contact is really important. We'll go into that too. And then how do you get to that? How do you get to that place that your family has already said, this is the safe place, this is where we're going to go? We'll talk about that. So, speaking of talking about that.
Yes. So the question was, do we have a plan? Yes. So here's the plan. This is a plan that we've redone completely last year. We've compiled a lot of things. We've reviewed a lot of things. This is kind of, we've tried to present the table of content to you, actually organized differently. Here's the table of content. So that's the same content, just organized differently. So you can see that we cover a lot of things. You've got a lot of the drills that are explained in there. So the types of drills that we do and what is the procedure for the drill. This is really a protocol manual. So if someone comes and doesn't know how we do any drill, you can go to the page and it's all explained. So step 1 you do this, step 2 you do that, etc. We have other things as well that you could see, and that's why this plan is actually not public. This is an internal document because of things like this. We don't want people to know what we do, otherwise it's easy for people to pick up the phone and just do exactly what they need to do, right? So some of the plans are internal, and that's the reason why this plan is internal. But you could see, just glance through it so you can see what we do. And then we also have safe work environment overview, and that's why we cover things such as the delightful headlines policy with the lights check. You're all part of the solution as well. We appreciate and encourage volunteering for lights checking, but volunteer drive policy requirement, etc. So everything, if you have any questions about the plan, you can email me, email the safety committee. You'll have the email of the safety committee at the end. So we're not going to dive in the plan, although it sounds fantastic and really interesting. We're going to keep it to natural disasters, but just giving you an overview of the tools that we have, right?
Great. All right, now who's thankful that the school has a plan? I know I am. It's great. All right, awesome. Let's keep going. So now we're going to talk back to the home. We're going to talk about how you guys can take what you've just heard, which is the school's plan, for 1,000 different things, and try to make it your own. I also want to stress that we're going to make these slides available to you afterwards. So if you want more information, this is something that's straightforward. And yeah, so I know I already kind of touched on this. Phone, work, cell, office. I know if you raise your hand saying they have multiple cell phones, put both of those on there. The more the merrier. Email is important, social media is important, medical facilities, and your school. Now your school, make sure you know the emergency contacts that's listed for your school, make sure they're up to date. I know that's something I don't have to say here, and I'm not going to go into say it, but just make sure that everything there is straightforward and accurate, and make sure that they know who to call in the event of a disaster. That's really important. And then also, don't just have it in one medium. If you have it on paper, take a picture of it, put it on your phone. If you have it on your phone, print it on paper. Redundancies to redundancies. Make sure that there is so many options for you to have this plan easily accessible for all of your family members, that they're able to get it when they really need it. And that involves including them in the plan. That's something that could be really fun and really a good conversation starter for your family members is to sit down take 10 minutes, talk to them about their plan, talk to them about where they want to meet, run through it, practice it. There's a ton of things you can do. And I don't want to bury the lead here. We're going to talk more about that as well. But jumping back to this, oh, we have a question. Yes.
We'll have a Cecilia.
Oh, great. Okay. Jumping back to the school.
Just wanted to let you know how do we get your information in case we need to contact you in case of an emergency. We have your email, phone number, and just contact information in case you need to be reached through when you enroll. So the first time you enroll the school in your contract, and then every year that information is updated through forms that you need to fill out, paper forms at the end of the year, and then we ask you to check if the information is still accurate. If it's not, you update it, send it back to us, and we update our list that way. And pretty soon it's going to be all online.
So very important for you to give us accurate, updated information so we can reach you if we need to.
And actually, if you need to update it or if you're not sure if we have the correct information in file, you need to contact Sarah Nicholas, who's in charge of updating that data. Her email is snichols@eb.org. She's the Lower School Secretary.
All right. Yeah. All right. So who remembers who to contact to upgrade or update their information? Anyone? Can we say it one more time? All right, great. Well, now we're going to talk about meeting places. This is really important. Does anyone have a meeting place for their family? Great. All right, so I'm not going to put you on the spot and tell us where the meeting place is, but I would just ask, the meeting place, is it close to your home or far away from your home? Close. Okay, good, yeah. Do you have one meeting place, 2 or 3? 2 meeting places, exactly. Why do you have 2 meeting places?
In case one of them is no longer there.
Yeah, or just not safe, or not realistic. Maybe your family is really spread out this one time when it happens, and how are they going to get to that one space, especially if it's in the epicenter of a disaster? So we say multiple meeting spaces. Make sure that you plan for your family. That includes your family as it's growing too. So if you have a new child, a baby, make sure that the places are stroller accessible. Make sure that where you pick is easily available to you. So if it's close to your house, make sure it's also easily accessible from work. If it's close to your work but not your spouse's work, make sure that you find a place that's right in the middle that everyone can get to, and then practice getting there. That's important too. And then pets or service animals. Think about that too. If you're evacuating to a shelter, know that not all shelters allow service animals. Or they do allow service, but not all shelters allow dogs, I should say. Or cats, pets. And some do. And it's important that you know which ones do and don't if you're in a situation that have pets. Now, how do you do that? Does anyone know? Easy resource you can use. I'll give you a hint. You can call it. It ends with 11 and it's not a 9.
311.
211. Yes, 211. Awesome. Yeah, does anyone have any questions on this? Great.
So what kind of place do you recommend?
Absolutely. I'm really glad you brought this up. So some places I would recommend is a publicly accessible space. Make sure you have multiple places. Make sure that you discuss the places with your family members to make sure they know what the places are. Now they can be police stations, they can be parks, they can be a neighbor's house, they can be a family member's house, they can be close to your house, they can be far from your house. Just make sure everyone knows where they are, everyone knows the sequence for them, and everyone knows who to contact at those places, around those places, in case there's some situation that prevents you from getting there. Now this is what the most important thing, it ties in so well with the communication plan, because if you don't know how to get back together when there's no way to communicate with your family members, that's just such a stressful situation. And we want to try to avoid that, we want to try to prepare for that, we want to try to make sure your entire family is included in this planning process, because it matters to everyone. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Yes?
Is it smart to just pick like a fire station?
Yeah, I would say there's no, well, I guess there is one wrong answer, which is not having a plan. But the more places that are safe, that are opportunity for your family, the better. So like pick a few in your mind right now. Like think of a couple right now, and then think if it's reasonable for your family to get there. And if the answer is yes, then I would say that's a good place. And then also hazard map it too, just to make sure that it's not in an area that has a similar threat to what you could be experiencing yourself.
How do you sequence the meeting points?
Absolutely.
So let's say you don't have means of communication. So you don't really know if the person already came, or you have to wait for the person at this particular location. Do you leave a message and you go to the next, something like this?
So there's a lot of different ways to do it. One thing I would say is sequence it by how far away from it is your house. So only pick like 2 or 3 of them. I'd recommend 3. One that's next door or in your neighborhood that your family members can easily get to from your home. Because again, you never know when it's going to happen. It could happen when you're at your home. The second one is a little bit farther, but maybe inside your town or the next town over. Something that's a good distance away, so if it was a localized event, you can still get to there. And make sure that they know that if there's any issue with the safety of one space, they move to the next space. So make sure that, and again, this is why it's so important that during your communication plan you talk about this, because it's going to be different in everyone's situation. But so the second one is within the town, far enough away that it wouldn't be in the epicenter of the situation, or in the next town over. The third one I'd recommend is out of state. And this is why it's so important for the contact, because if you don't have a way to contact someone that lives in this out-of-state place, can you guys raise your hand if you know someone, like a family friend, or have a family member that lives outside of California? Great. So, not to put anyone on the spot, who doesn't? Raise your hand. All right, you guys just have a network around you of people who have people outside their state. Have a conversation, talk to them, get to know them, ask them if you can also use that spot as your connection spot for your family as well. We're all a community. Let's tap into our resources. This is one big network. Use your network. Yes?
In terms of talking about this with the kids, I mean, we should assume our children will just stay at their school, right? Until, I have a middle schooler, so it's a little more like have a gray area, but he's not gonna like leave his school to go to a meeting place, I assume.
Yeah, so
Maybe keep them at
We're
school.
not going to release that.
So it's really I know here, but like,
Oh, yeah.
they have more freedom at the school that means that. But so the meeting point is, it's more for like the adults at this point?
Well,
We
it-
should assume kids will stay at their school, right?
it really depends, which is why it's good to have a conversation with your entire family, because if they're at school, then yes, that's one situation that's already been accounted for your kids. But what if they're at a friend's house? What if your kids are with your spouse shopping? There's a lot of different situations here that are outside of the school area that would still require this collection point. So you're right, it doesn't necessarily directly have to do with your kids 24/7, but I guarantee there's going to be some situation at some point in our lives where we're going to have to come together for one reason, whether it be a personal family emergency or whether it be a big emergency. It's going to happen. So it's important that this is in place not just for these disasters, but just for everyday life.
Can you share a few examples of group meeting places?
Absolutely. So a good example would be a neighbor's house. A good example would be a park that's a little bit farther away from your community. A good example would be a restaurant that you guys care about. A good example would be a shelter. And how do you find the shelters? 211. 211's perfect. A good example would be a relative that lives outside of the state. This is what I want to stress. Everyone's plan is different. Everyone's plan is unique to their circumstances. And take that into account. If you're in a family that has someone that has an access and functional need, has a disability, has a hard time walking, then make a plan for that. Pick a place that's accessible to them. If you have a pet, pick a place that's accessible to them. And make sure everyone knows it. Talk about it in the family. Did I answer your question? Okay. All right, so we're going to jump into the school.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alfonso Del Torre. I'm the facilities director. As far as our meeting places, in the event of an earthquake, everybody is going to get out of the buildings, and we're going to walk around, on the street and meet on the soccer field. That's for the lower school and preschool. As far as the middle school, we're going to meet on the tennis court or basketball courts. I'm sorry. In the event of an intruder, we're going to do the lower school and middle school are going to exit the school, and we're going to meet on Berkeley Bowl Heinz parking lot. So both schools, all campuses will meet on that Heinz parking lot. The preschool has a door at the very end, right? So this door it's like a fire escape. As soon as you go out that door, we cross the street, and we have a mayor's auditorium. It's like a big sound where it's a business, right? And we use their auditorium. It's a very secure location. So we go in through there, and everyone goes, everybody is met, we walk everybody through, and while everybody's accessed. The reason why we have separate areas that we meet are in the event of an intruder, we want to get the kids out. We don't want them here on campus. And in the event of an earthquake, the reason why we meet on the soccer field is because we have set up in that area, we have sheds out there where we could set out first aid stations and canopies and stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Is kindergarten in this case considered lower school or preschool?
Okay,
Lower school? Okay.
Yes.
lower school, yeah.
So basically, all the classrooms that are located on the big yard, including the moyenne section, the low moyenne section of Florian, is going to be going to the...
Okay.
Now it always depends also on the situation. If they, let's say, having recess outside, they will just go through the preschool building in the Mayas. Will go the closest, basically.
And you also know, the sequence. You go to Mayor Sound, there's no one. So we will let you know about that also. We'll talk about emergency. First of all, we had an event last year about this, and so an event, the information. So we'll let you know about this. Every other year, we'll do full school, first level 3 or intruder. So you have the possibility to practice and understand what we're doing. We also have emergency contact systems. So messages will go out. You can call the school if you have any questions. So you'll have the means to kind of sequence what you need to do and where you need to go.
All right, so just to tie this with a bow, if one of these events does happen and you are put in place, what happens in terms of contact?
So if we can contact, in case of an earthquake, we'll have emergency SMS, also text messages going out, emails going out, and so you'll know that this is an emergency situation. So you have to go to this meeting point. So most likely it will be the school. Even if you don't receive this message for some reason, either because we cannot send it or you cannot receive it, you know that something major happened, you come to the school and you know where to go, right? It's the same thing for intruder events. You will receive emergency texts, emergency messages, you will come, and most likely it will be all blocked. So the perimeter will be blocked by law enforcement, but you know where you need to go. So your preschool, depending on the situations, those are fluid, obviously situations. So the preschool is supposed to go to Mayor Sound. If they can't, we'll send them to the Purple. So you go to Mayor Sound, there's no one there, you know that you have to go around and go to the Purple, right?
What if we have difficulty then making it here? How long are you going to be out there for? Like if something happens and you can't get there for hours, what then do you do?
Yeah, we can keep the preschoolers or the students for several hours, actually. We keep them the time that they need to be kept. For an earthquake, we have emergency kits, etc. We could be lasting days, 3 days actually. Yeah, so this is accounted for. We also have, those two events are very different events, right? Very low probability of incurring. For the second one, very, very low. I have to stress that. We just have to be ready because that's our job to be ready, but probabilities are very, very minimal. But we'll have also help of all law enforcement agencies around the perimeter. We'll have a lot of people coming, so we'll have a lot of help. In the case of the first one, we might be on our own for several days because people will be super busy doing other things, or maybe because of liquefaction it's difficult to get there. So many possibilities, but we could last days.
That's also, if I can just add, that's why it's so important on your form, the emergency form you give to the school, to have these extra people that you add that are authorized to pick up your child. Because if one of them come and they are on the list and they are authorized to pick up your child, could be a friend that lives near your area or a parent at EB, they can pick up your child that day because they only authorized emergency. So for instance, if you're stuck in San Francisco, there's no more bridges, but your best friend, lives in a neighborhood and is going to pick up their own kids. If you have a way for them to pick up your children, then they can be released to these people that are on your list. And that's why when we get a list of emergency contact with only one name, sometimes it's a problem for us. But we will stay here as long as we have to. I mean, I work at the school, that's why I say we, but we.
Absolutely. All right, so who can tell me who to contact if you want to update your emergency contact list? Perfect. Wow, this is great. All right. Let's go through this. Sharing information. That's what we're doing right now. We are sharing information. We're talking to the people sitting next to us right now. We're having these conversations. We're making sure that in your family, everyone has a copy of their emergency plan. Everyone has a contact list. Your kids in their backpack, it just has a list of people contacted in an emergency. There's never a situation where you're going to be upset that you added it, right? Make sure that your kids know what to do. Make sure you talk to them about it. Make sure that it's placed in a central location in your home. Make sure that it's accessible. Make sure that it's everywhere. Print out as many as you can and just put them around the wall. Wallpaper your house with it. Do something fun. Make it interesting. Make it something that it's an activity with the kids. And that's what's important here. I encourage you guys too that if you want to have a really fun afternoon, check out ready.gov/kids. We have a lot of fun games. We have a lot of fun resources. It's a great way to introduce it along with my goodies that I'll be giving out. Just start that conversation with them. And then practice your plan. Okay. Let's get into this right now. Who has ever done a fire drill in their school, in their workplace? Raise your hand if you've been in a fire drill. Why do you do the fire drill? So you know what to do in the event of a fire, right? How many people have done an earthquake drill? All right, great, all right. How many people have done a drill for their plan to make sure that their family knows how to get to one of these safe spaces in the event of a disaster? It's tough, right? It's something that you don't necessarily think, but it's just as important. In fact, I would just say that doing this regularly, talking, having a conversation, talking to your neighbors, getting to know the people around you, practicing it's just so important and it's so easy and it's a fun time and you can do this as just a normal Friday night. And we're going to talk about the school's drills right now.
All right, so we do 10 fire drills per year, 10 at the lower school in Mount Denal and 3 at the middle school. With those fire drills, we do all the evacuations and we do our meeting place on campus. We do 3 whole school earthquake drills per year. That's broken up into 3 levels. So the first level is the duck and cover procedure and the evacuation procedure. Second level we do what we did in the first one, plus we do like first aid station setups and we do like injury simulations so the kids could practice. Level 3, we do that every other year. We rotate that with Alice, and that's like our highest level, so we do 1, 2, 3, plus we have the addition of, we do the release information where everyone goes through and sees their who's going to get picked up, our emergency releases, and we actually have students picked up, and that's done every other year. And then lastly, we have our whole school. We do once a year is the whole school lockdown, and with that lockdown procedure, we do have a system in place. We have pull stations. If you look in the corner by the door, if those pull stations are pulled, it sets off an alarm for the whole school, and then we know to do the lockdown and then break it.
So now we're going to talk about building a kit. And again, I want to stress, do this with your family. Make this an event. This doesn't have to be stressful. This doesn't have to be boring. This can be really fun. So turn it into a game. Have your kids make a kit with you. And again, it's important to do this before an emergency because you don't want to be scrambling. You don't want to be like, oh no, where's the water? Or oh no, where's the food? Or no, oh no, what do I do? This is a perfect time to take action. You're empowered right now. You have the information. You know what to do. You've sat through this. You've heard me talk way too much. You guys know what the steps you need to take are, so take the steps. And this is kind of really topical too. The last point here. You never know what you're taking for granted. Electricity, for instance. That's something that we're not guaranteed, as we all know too well right now. So just keep in mind that we can't predict the future. No one has that golden crystal ball that tells us what to do next. So you ready? And let's talk about what, oh yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, you may get to this, I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun, but I'm just curious about where to keep these kits in
Absolutely.
your house.
Yep.
I know you said it's good to have one in the car, it's good
Yes.
to have one in the house, but like, in the case of an earthquake, some parts of the house might be inaccessible, so
You're absolutely
where
right.
do you stash it?
So I will talk about this, but just to address that really quickly, you want to make sure that everywhere that you travel, you have a kit with you. That might sound like a lot, it's really not that much. Your desk, just make sure you have food, comfortable shoes, a chair, change of clothing, some water. Your car, make sure you have a blanket, a jacket, flashlight, just basic stuff to get through some time, because you never know how long this event is going to be. And then in your house, there's a lot of different places. Now, I'm really glad you mentioned that. We're going to go through what to do in terms of how to use your kit, because that's important too. Knowing what's inside of it, knowing what's not inside of it is really important. But keeping it under your bed, that's a perfect place. Keeping it near your door, so as you're exiting, you can grab it. Make sure that your entire family knows where it is. Put it on your communication plan in big, bold letters. The kit is here, go here. And make sure that there's redundancies too, because you're right, you can't guarantee, especially if you live in a liquefaction area, because housing codes are not necessarily made to withstand an earthquake. Housing codes are made to make sure that the building itself doesn't crumble in, but it doesn't guarantee it. So keep in mind that just like we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know where these are going to happen, make sure that there's redundancies. Yeah.
So we should put the kit outside of the house, you think, or?
Yeah, there's never a bad place to keep a kit. I would just say if you're going to house it outside, make sure it's in a secure location. So if you have it in your garage, for instance, that's a good place to put it. But make sure everyone knows where it is. That's the most important thing.
Sorry, this is one per person?
Oh yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up. So we're actually talking about this is 1 gallon of water per person per day. And then at least 3 days supply of non-perishable food. That's a little vague. Now, does anyone know how many calories the average person should have in the average day?
2,000.
Around 2,000. It depends on the type of person. It depends on their caloric needs, but 2,000 is a good metric to use. So keep in mind that right there, and 3 days supply is bare minimum. What I would say is the more the merrier. Make sure that you update your kit to make sure it's accessible for your entire family, make sure it has enough resources for your entire family, and make sure that you have a little bit more than you need. You're never going to be upset if you have more food, more water than you need. You can share with your neighbors. Turn it into a nice big potluck. You know, make it fun, make it something that's interesting. And then it's really important too to think about how you're going to get these alerts and warnings. If the cell phone coverage towers are down, radio's still working. Make sure you get a NOAA alert radio. That's great. Make sure you have a flashlight with extra batteries. Make sure your pet are accounted for. Raise your hand if you have pets. I know I do. All right, keep your hands raised. So what I have right there that's going around is a really nifty pet preparedness thing. I don't know if you guys have followed what's happened to pets in disasters, but you know it's way too often that people don't account for the pets and have to leave immediately, and sometimes they can't take their pets, or you know the shelter they're going to doesn't allow pets. And it's something that you have to plan for because it's a real thing. I know I have a dachshund, his name is Finny, and I have way too much supplies for him. It took me 5 minutes to throw it all together. Super easy. And then there's a list here. I want to stress something too. Just because there's something on the list doesn't mean you absolutely have to have it. It's just good to keep in mind, good to consider. Now, a few things I want to point out for this is medication is really important too. Important documents. Can anyone think of why it's important to have important documents in your kit? What are some important documents that you need in your kit? Passport, that's a good one. Identification is really important. Anything else that you guys can think of?
Blood type card?
Medication, yeah. And then what was that?
Blood type?
Blood type's good. Yeah. More the merrier when it comes to that. In my previous life, I was a Social Security representative. So I help people get their lives back, which is a huge process. Make sure you bring your actual Social Security card. Make sure that's there. There's a few other things I want to say. Yes?
Are copies of these okay?
No, copies do not qualify as Social Security cards in terms of an official document.
Because, I mean, So that's why you keep your social security card in your kit?
You can. You can also replace your social security card.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to say just really quickly bare minimum, and I'm saying this just because I know this is unique information. As long as you have, at the bare minimum, a medical bill with you that's signed off by a doctor that has your date of birth on it and your name, you can get a replacement social security card. And that's something that I just know from my personal experience as a former social security representative. So that being said, that's something to keep in mind too, but documents are important too because, so I'm going to talk about flood insurance, because why would you need insurance? Can anyone guess how much damage 1 inch of water does to a house? This is all the marbles, guys. This is a serious one. I'm taking all guesses. A lot, yeah, a lot. I think you deserve this one for that. Yeah, nice. $25,000. $25,000. What can you buy with $25,000?
Oh, man.
Right? Do you know what you don't want to buy with $25,000? Your house back to normal? That's an expense you don't need. It's an expense you don't want. That's something that you don't have to take on as long as you have insurance for floods, for earthquakes, for everything. What life throws at you. I'm sure that's someone's tagline. All right. Does anyone have any questions about the safety kits before I jump on to the school of safety kits? Anyone? All right. Make sure you know what's inside of it. That's really important.
Oh, I had a question. I'm
Yes.
sorry. For the NOAA weather radio.
Yes.
Where could we procure
So you can go on any search website and type it in. Now a lot of online retailers sell it, and you can just have it shipped to yourself. I can think of one mega store online that I don't want to say for obvious reasons that you could potentially get this weather radio app. All right, I'm going to jump into the schools policy.
All right, so as far as our kits at EB, we have kits located in every classroom. Those first aid backpacks are at the entry, usually at the entry of every classroom, and they have important, as far as, he mentioned documents. We have all, your kids' like safety release stuff, their allergy stuff, anything that can be used to help as far as getting them picked up, and just everything. So everything is there. That's one area that we have that. So when you guys fill out your documentation, it gets put into that backpack, and it also gets stored. We have 2 locations. For the middle school, we have a location. I took a picture, but it looks kind of small. But there's a storage container outside. So that's on 7th Street, and that's a locked container. And on that container, we have additional first aid stuff. We have canopies. We had talked about, somebody asked a question about, how long we're going to have, how long can the kids be here? So we do have water. We do have food in those containers that will last 72 hours. So, and then for the, we had talked earlier for the maternal and the lower school, we do have bins. That's this picture here. They're kind of the southwest corner of the soccer field. And we have 2 sheds there, and they also contain additional first aid supplies and additional handbooks. And those handbooks also carry that same information that's inside those, the classroom in case the teachers cannot access them. So we also have shelter-in-place equipment. We have search and rescue equipment. Search and rescue equipment, that's in the event of an earthquake where we need to enter the building. We do have crews that are assigned, captains, and we need equipment. So we have that outside the building. So, in the event that, we can't get to it because of it will be outside, so we'll have all that information.
I just want to mention too, this is not ever going to happen in a vacuum. Don't think that this is it. Don't think that this is the only resources that the school will have available in case of a disaster. Because remember, you guys are part of a bigger community, part of a network. You guys are part of Berkeley, you guys are part of California, you guys are part of the US. And we're supporting each other, and we can support you as well, but it's more important that you guys understand the risks that are associated with it and the steps you can take, just like the school has. And getting this together, it's not that big of a deal, it's really fun, there's a lot of different steps you can take. And it's pretty easy. Speaking of easy, it's maintaining your kit. Just as it's important to make sure that your kit is there, it's also important to make sure your kit has good stuff in it. You don't want to be in a situation where the food is a little bit out of there. You can still eat it, I'm sure, but do you want to at that point? That's the question. Replace items as they're noted. Just know the expiration date. Set a reminder on your phone. That's what I do for the expiration dates. That way I know a week before, oh, I'm having beans tomorrow. It's easy. And then rethink your needs. This is really important too. You know, as your family grows, as your family changes, as people leave for college, which is a really exciting time, your family needs change. And keep that in mind. Always have a little bit extra, because you never know when you're going to need to support your neighbor who might not be in a good situation. And then also where you store it is important. I know the school did a great job of picking a storage location that's accessible, storage location that is dry, a storage location that has everything you need to make sure it's there when you need it. And then here are some storage location areas. I know we had this question. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth. Make sure that's ready. Make sure that everyone knows where it is. Make sure there's a work one, there's a vehicle one, and there's a home one. Anybody have any questions on this before? Breeze right through it. Great, I did a great job. And then stay informed. Learn what protective measures to take. Take those sheets of paper, take it to heart, take a quick glance. Talk about it with your family. Open up a dialogue. Just takes a little bit. Turn the hazard hunt into a game. That's what I did. My little nephew loves to point things out, and my sister hates that I did this because literally every other day she's like, why do you tell him this? Now I have to anchor everything. But it's so much fun for the kids. They love this. Turn it into a game. Say, can you find one of these hazards and point it out to me? And I guarantee if you empower them to do so, they'll blow past all of your expectations and make it fun for you too. And then take a different route to work one day. Find out a different way to get there. Waze is a free app that's really easy to use, and it'll give you a bunch of different locations that you can take. If you want to try experimenting, try avoiding one specific road. Let's pretend in our mind this road is shut down. Where do you go? How do you do it? Look through Waze. And then understand. Always make sure that you have redundancies in your communication plan. Always make sure that if there's some issue with one number, they know how to call next. Always make sure that you know where to get your alerts and warnings. So, alerts and warnings. Let's talk about this. All right, what is AC alert? Raise your hand if anyone, Alameda County, I love that. All right, that just gets it right there. So, who does not live in Alameda County? Great, great, great. I'm sorry, what counties do you guys live in?
West Contrast.
All right, we got a whole mess. Now, what is universal that a number everyone can call to find out what their emergency alert systems are? 211. 211, that's great. So who doesn't live in Alameda County? Raise your hand. Keep your hands raised. Who's going to call 211 to find out their alert system? Those people whose hands are raised. Okay, great. So Alameda County Alert is great. It's local. It's going to give you all the same information you need. And it's more focused in on our area. And this is important to know what our specific threats are. Going forward from there, our specific threats. I'm a member of FEMA, so I'm going to talk about our FEMA app, which I am a die-hard believer in. It's free, it's easy to download, it's something that also gives you alerts and warnings, and more importantly, it doesn't just give you alerts and warnings for your county, it gives you alerts and warnings for a family's county. For, I think it's up to like 5 counties, it's incredible, it's great, and it also has some tools and tips that you need to keep this conversation going from this table. I know I talk a lot, but I'm not going to be talking too much after this presentation, so this is a great way to get more information. This plus radio.gov, and we'll talk more about that. No weather radio. Now, where can you go to buy those weather radios that we were talking about? Anyone want to say a certain place you can go?
You can go to REI.
REI has it. Anyone else? Any other online source that you can buy it?
Others off.
That's an example of one, yes. And then call 211. 211 has a litany of stuff. They also offer training, which is really fun. So if you want to continue this, and speaking of continuing it, I believe I have a slide coming up that talks more about continuing this. But first.
So we have a few options if we need to contact you in an emergency situation. Back to making sure you update your contact information with the school with Sarah Nicholas. With that information, we have a system where we're able to push notifications to you through email, text messages, and pre-recorded voicemail. About 2 weeks ago, we tested that system, and hopefully you have received either an email, a pre-recorded voicemail, and or a text message. And if you have not, please come to me. Something new that I want to point out is if you can get your phone out, and if you have done that yet, text yes to this number. Because nowadays, regulations ask us to have an opt-in for people to receive text messages. We can't just bombard them with text messages. So if you text that, then we will also receive a text message from us, and not just an email and a pre-recorded voicemail. I want to point out, too, that in case of an emergency situation, we will also update our website. So the homepage of the website will have information also there, and Facebook page. So you can also go on our Facebook page, website. So if we can't contact you for any reason, you can go on those pages, in those places to find out what's going on.
Okay, now finally, this is the final last thrust here, which is getting involved. You guys have been armed with information. You guys know what to do. You guys know who to call. You guys know what number. Which, by the way, what number is it? 211. That's right. So now you can just take it a little bit step further. Make sure that your community is safe. You can do so by volunteering for local charities, for local organizations that are active in disasters. If you're interested in anyone, 211 will give you more information. Be part of the community planning process. This is something that's open to you guys. You can go to these events. You can find out when the next one's happening and jump into it. Join our Starter Preparedness project. This one's kind of fun. This one's my favorite. It's kind of what I do. So if you guys want any more information on this, ask to find out how you can get involved in your school, which I believe we're going to talk about a little bit. And then find out where there's gaps in your community's plan. Find out if your community has a plan. Berkeley actually has a really fun festival happening this Saturday that I'm going to be at. On the 12th, it's free. It's the East Bay Community Preparedness Fair. It's a great way to get involved, a great way to get more information, and it's a great venue. It's going to be super fun. There's going to be a big shake truck. Check it out. It's fun for kids. And share tips with your neighbors and community. Make sure that you have these conversations because, again, you're not in a vacuum. You're not in a bubble. You're part of a community. You're part of a neighborhood. You're part of a town. You're part of a school system. You're part of X, Y, and Z. Engage that network. It's not just good for jobs. It's good for having a sense of community. And, hey, if a barbecue happens, it's fun. And speaking of fun,
how to be involved in the school. We welcome your involvement. It is very important. We have a partnership. It is important in your students' best interest that we communicate. We do events such as this one to inform you. Use the language that has been presented to your child in his or her class because we do tend to present things sometimes a little differently to be age appropriate and kids friendly. So if you have any questions, ask your teachers. We'll share some resources with you as well, so you can use this language to base conversations. Ask your students to follow direction during school drills. That's also very important to reinforce this, so they can make the best of it, and we can have smooth drills, and they understand why they're important. Follow your children's questions. Sometimes where something happens, you want to talk about it with your child, you don't really know how to do this, but they will have questions. So let them ask the questions, try to answer the best you can, and take it from there. Read the available resources. Also, we'll share some resources with you, not only right after this presentation, but along the way we inform you of some things happening for earthquake when we'll have the level 3. Again, it's going to be right before the April break. Or when most likely we'll do the enhanced lockdown drills, we'll send some information home as well. It's an opening for discussion about your personal safety at home. That's really one of the main takeaways. This is what we're trying to do here today, to open you up on some of those actually important conversations. So take it as, hopefully as seriously as we take it in the school. We know, we have to be ready. You guys have to be ready at home. If you have any questions, we really welcome them. So you are more than welcome to contact any of us, but you can contact Safety Committee here. So you have the email. Please write in the email in the line the precise topic in the subject so we know where to orient your questions, and we'll try to answer you as quick as possible.
Great, I'm glad we just talked about questions, because guess what's up next? Now, I want to say this has been a very stressful topic. I know there's a lot of different factors that influence people's specific families. So if you have any questions that I haven't directly addressed pertaining to your specific situation, you can find me afterwards. I'll be sticking around here for a few minutes, and I'll answer any specific questions. Now, we don't have that much time, but I want to open the floor for some questions if anyone has any general questions. Yes?
So I had a question about the reliability of wireless during an emergency.
Sure.
I know, like, you could be at a bar platform and if the trains are running late, you can't get things out. So what is the most reliable method? Would it be the radio, or like where should people get their information in the event wireless isn't really cooperating?
So that's situation by situation. I would say radio is usually the best if you want the ultimate thing. Ham radio. I know it sounds old school, and it is old school, but it's old school for a reason. It works. Ham radio doesn't require any infrastructure, and it can basically be accessible in places that don't have wireless internet, which is a lot of places, unfortunately, and that just gets worse with the disaster. Now, this is important because it also affects your communication plan. So if you know how to use a ham radio, make sure that your family does as well, because you want to contact your family members. You can actually take free ham radio courses, or I don't know about, I'm going to hold back on free. You can take ham radio courses. I know that there's one instructor, if you guys want information. They're in Sonoma County. I can connect you with them for ham radios. That's a great resource to use, and that one is unaffected in disasters in that it still works. In terms of your wireless situation, that's service by service, so I can't particularly say on that. You can walk 5 feet and get perfect signal, walk another 5 feet and you're not. And that's just kind of the fact of the matter right now. So try as much as you can, and remember, if your signal is busy and you're on a wireless, try sending a text. Text is a much higher chance of getting through in the event of a disaster. All right, does anyone have any other questions I might be able to answer? Oh, yes.
I just noticed that in an event of an earthquake, one of the suggestions was to stay in bed if you are
Yes,
in bed. And
absolutely.
I was just wondering why do that instead of duck cover.
Sure, so let me address that by saying that you should absolutely duck, cover, and hold in bed. So think about it, you're on a mattress, it's poofy, it's nice, it's comfy. If you're to fall, if there's an earthquake, you're on a mattress. But the steps you should take if you're in bed, which I'm glad you brought this up, is get in the fetal position. Cover your head with your pillow, face down. Make sure that your family knows that to do that as well, because it's a very safe place to be. Because you got to remember, it's not so much the earthquake that hurts you, it's stuff falling on you. All right, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I just had one last question about the safety bags. How much should they weigh?
So that's going to be person by person. I would recommend if you're doing one with your kid, make sure they have their own bag and make sure it's not overweight. Not to go too much into it, but certain members of the family can carry more, and I'd put more in their bags. But generally speaking, there's not a right answer to that because every family is different. So just don't focus so much on how much it should weigh. Focus on what's inside of it, making sure it's enough for your family. I hope that answers your question.
Well, I was just thinking, if you have to walk, and you have a heavy bag, that would be great. But if you can drive, then having a lot of stuff is great. So I just was wondering if there was a way to balance it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you should have kits based on your need and based on your situation. Driving kits, you can put more stuff in your car. That's always something to keep in mind. Your car kit doesn't actually have to be in a bag. It's good that it is, but you just put it in your trunk of your car. It's still useful. Shelter in place is different. So ready kits are good for every situation, but shelter in place is when you are ordered to stay in your house. And those generally are larger caches of materials and goods for you. So that kind of allows you to have a bulk amount of items that you can use, as opposed to a ready kit, which is really meant to make sure you can get out of your situation safely and have enough food and water, again, for a bear. And that's not that heavy. You'd be surprised. The water is a little heavy in that situation, but when you have a whole family sharing the burden of it, it becomes a lot more manageable. Yep.
You take on generators or solar power type options?
Yeah, so generators and solar powers are good things to look into. I think that if you have the means to do it, it's great. But in terms of a whole community approach, we try to make sure that what we share with people is something that everyone has the option and availability to do so. It's also important to remember that in cases that you might need a generator, there's also other options. So even if you don't have the means to get a generator, because it does cost quite a bit, you can call 211 and find a local cooling center if it's too hot. You can find a local warming center if it's too cold. You can find a shelter that might have access to generators. But as a general sense, generators are a great next step in your preparedness methods. But just while I'm on that, make sure your generator, if it's diesel, isn't running indoors. Make sure that carbon monoxide is a factor in your planning. That goes for cooking out too. Just keep in mind. All right, anybody have any other questions? I know I'm a little bit over right now. And because this is a whole community, Anne, do you have anything else that you want to add?
Nothing else, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I will just close very briefly. I want to thank you all for coming. We know those could be difficult conversations, so we try to be prepared. And you've got so much information right now. Digest it. Talk to your friends. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to us if you want to. Talk to your fellow parents. Take your time and make a plan. So thank you for coming. Thanks to Anne for putting this event together. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen, for coming.